Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It started with the dishwasher. That's not poetic or dramatic, I know. But that's the truth. It wasn't some explosive fight or wild accusation. It was Tuesday night, late, and I noticed dishes had been piling up for 3 days straight. The sink was full, the counter a mess, and I couldn't find a clean mug for coffee the next morning. So I asked, casually, maybe too casually, hey, could you run the dishwasher tonight? She was standing at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone, wine glass in hand, wrapped in one of those oversized sweaters she used to only wear when she was in a good mood. She didn't even look at me, just kept scrolling, then mumbled something under her breath that I couldn't catch. What was that? I asked. That's when she looked up, eyes hard, jaw already clenched like she'd been rehearsing the response for weeks. You don't own me. The words just landed, cold, unapologetic, like I committed some massive sin by asking about dishes. I stood there, not even sure I heard her right. I didn't say I owned you. She cut me off. Exactly. You didn't say it, but it's how you act. Like everything around here is your kingdom, and I'm supposed to follow orders. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What could I say? That asking for a basic shared task suddenly made me a tyrant? That I'd worked 2 back-to-back 12-hour shifts just so we could stay on top of bills this month? That I hadn't touched the TV remote in days because I didn't want to interrupt her show schedule? I didn't say any of that. I just stood there, mug still in hand, staring at the woman I thought I knew, someone I believed was my partner, and realizing that somehow, in the quiet erosion of our marriage, we'd stopped being us. I didn't even know who I was to her anymore. She went back to her phone like she'd just swatted a fly. And the weirdest part? I didn't feel angry. I didn't yell. I didn't slam a door or toss my mug in the sink. Instead, I just noticed things. The silence in the room. The smell of microwaved popcorn still lingering from the night before. Her glass sitting on a coaster I had bought as part of a thoughtful anniversary set 2 years ago. A detail she probably didn't remember. Later that night, I lay in bed pretending to sleep while she binge-watched some reality show with her AirPods in, cackling at drama that wasn't ours, at least not yet. I stared at the ceiling while her words played on a loop in my head. You don't own me. Not angry. Not even emotional. Just cold. Final. Like she had pulled the plug on some invisible machine I didn't know was still running. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized something. She wanted freedom. Fine. I'd give it to her. Not with shouting. Not with ultimatums. Not even with spite. I'd give her the exact thing she claimed I was denying her. Total freedom. I wouldn't ask for her input on bills anymore. Wouldn't check in about her schedule. Wouldn't remind her when insurance renewals were due or whether we needed groceries. I'd stop folding her laundry, stop cleaning up the kitchen after her midnight snacks, stop sending "Did you eat?" texts when she forgot dinner again. No reminders. No help. No intrusion. She wanted independence? She could have it. Every ounce of it. She just didn't realize that freedom doesn't always feel like power. Sometimes, it just feels like being alone. And that realization that she had no idea what she was really asking for is what made me decide right then and there to stop helping her fail quietly. At first, she didn't notice. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. After that night, I didn't say a word about the dishes, or the laundry, or the bills, or anything, really. I didn't stop being polite. I just stopped managing things that weren't mine to manage. When the internet bill came due, I didn't mention it. I had already moved my work laptop to the office, using mobile data from my phone just in case. On the 4th day, the Wi-Fi cut out mid-show, and I heard her yell from the bedroom. Is the Wi-Fi down? I didn't even get up. Just said, probably. I didn't pay the bill this time. She stepped into the hallway. What do you mean? You didn't pay it. I looked at her calmly. I figured you'd handle it. You said I don't own you. She stared at me like she didn't quite recognize what I just said. Like I'd spoken a different language. And then she scoffed and walked away, muttering something about childish behavior. But I could tell she wasn't as sure of herself anymore. That same week, the trash overflowed. Groceries started thinning out. The sink filled again. I watched her begin to twitch at the chaos, not big reactions, just quiet agitation. Her neat little universe was no longer on autopilot, and she didn't know why. She texted me on Thursday. Why didn't you refill the car? I replied with just 3 words. It's your car. No follow-up. No explanation. By Saturday, the tension in the house had become physical, like you could slice the silence with a knife. Still, she didn't say anything directly. She just started sighing louder, slamming doors just a bit harder, leaving laundry piled on my side of the bed like it would provoke me into helping again. I didn't. That weekend, we had dinner at her sister Kira's place. Usually, Kira is a hurricane of noise and stories, but this time she was quieter. Watching. Halfway through the night, when my wife stepped out to take a call, Kira turned to me across the table and asked, "Are you two okay?" I nodded. Better than ever. She tilted her head. She seems, I don't know, unsettled. She said she wanted more independence, I said, shrugging. Kira's eyes narrowed. Did you two fight? No. I just stopped doing things for someone who doesn't want to be done for. I didn't mean it as a jab. Just a fact. Kira didn't press further, but I could tell something clicked in her expression. Maybe she'd heard things from my wife that didn't line up. Maybe she'd been the sounding board for those "you don't own me" declarations and was starting to realize how hollow they really were. When we got home that night, I noticed her scrolling through a budgeting app on her phone. She didn't say anything, but I saw her lips move as she mentally tallied up costs, probably realizing how much of our life she never tracked, never planned for. And still, I didn't say a word. The next morning, she ran late for work. She snapped at me in the kitchen. "Why didn't you set the coffee pot last night?" I looked up from my mug, already half empty. "I figured you'd take care of it. You know, as a free and independent woman." She didn't have a comeback. Just stared at me like I'd grown horns. Later that day, her sister texted me. "Whatever's going on, she needs to talk to you. I think she's spiraling." I responded with a thumbs up. Nothing more. Because here's the truth. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was simply stepping back and letting her walk her talk. But the thing about talk is, it's easy when someone else is quietly catching your fall behind the scenes. Remove the safety net, and people start to realize just how high up they've been walking, and how far the drop really is. It was around the second week when she finally broke the silence. Not an apology, not a reflection, just a tired, clipped, almost annoyed request. "Can you help me cover rent this month?" I looked up from my screen. "Didn't you already Venmo me your half?" She hesitated. I had to use that for something else. I didn't ask what. I just stared at her for a beat too long. That was enough. She stormed off. Later that night, after she went to bed, I heard the faint hum of her voice through the wall. She was on a call with someone, and her tone was soft. Too soft. The way she used to speak to me when she needed something but didn't want to admit it. Curious, I cracked the door an inch and listened. I know it's a lot to ask. I just need to float this for a week or two. Pause. You're a lifesaver. Seriously. I owe you big time. Another pause, then a laugh I hadn't heard in weeks. Too familiar. The next morning, I checked her call history. Saved under just a first name, Eli. That name rang a bell. Eli was some guy she used to mention offhandedly, someone from her gym. They'd done a few fundraising events together, exchanged messages, the usual. I never thought anything of it back then. But now, something felt off. I didn't confront her. I watched. Over the next few days, she started dressing differently when leaving the house. She wore makeup again, not casual, everyday touches, but intentional, the kind that said she was hoping to be noticed. She stopped taking her car, too. Started calling rideshares or saying Eli's giving me a lift. One night, she came home just after midnight. Tipsy. Lipstick smudged. And for once, she didn't even pretend to sneak in quietly. I waited until the next afternoon to ask, "So how's Eli?" She froze mid-text. "Why? You mentioned him yesterday. Just wondering." She shrugged, too casual. "He's just a friend helping out." I nodded. "Generous guy." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just surprised someone would offer that much help, with no expectations." She scoffed, but I saw it, the flash of guilt. The crack in the armor. A few days later, I got the confirmation I wasn't even looking for. I was visiting a friend who manages a restaurant on the edge of town. As I pulled into the parking lot, I saw her. On the patio. With Eli. And they weren't just chatting. She was leaning in, laughing, her fingers tracing circles around the rim of her wine glass. He was close. Too close. His hand rested on the back of her chair in that territorial way, just enough to say mine, but subtle enough to pretend otherwise. I didn't approach. I watched. I saw her tuck her hair behind her ear the way she always did when she wanted to feel admired. I saw him lean in, whisper something that made her blush. And I saw the moment she reached for her phone and snapped a photo of the drinks, probably for social media, careful not to show who was with her. careful not to show what she was doing. She knew it was wrong. She just didn't care. That night, she didn't come home. She texted around 1:13 a.m. Crashing at Kira's. Don't wait up. She was lying. Kira called me the next morning looking for her. I didn't respond. I didn't call her out. Why would I? She had her freedom. Let her enjoy it. 2 days later, the fallout arrived. She walked in the door wearing the same outfit from the night before. Her heels were scuffed, her eyes sunken, and her phone clutched like it might crack under pressure. I barely looked up. She hovered near the hallway, silent. And then finally, her voice broke. Can we talk? I didn't say no. I didn't say yes. I just waited. She stepped closer and said, I think I made a mistake. I said, which one? Her lips parted like she had a dozen answers, but none she wanted to say out loud. That's when it happened. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, froze, then turned it face down. But I had already seen the preview on her lock screen. Eli. Don't make this a thing. It was just fun. I'm not your safety net. There it was. The double deception. She had leaned on someone thinking he'd fill the void she created. But she miscalculated again. He didn't want her. He wanted to use her the same way she had been trying to use me. And now she had no one. Not him. And, as she was beginning to realize it, not me either. That evening, she arrived at our apartment with a tremor in her step that I hadn't seen before, a silent plea masked as indignation. The door clicked shut behind her, and for a long, heavy moment, the space between us was filled with the sound of our unspoken words. I sat at the kitchen table, a stack of unopened envelopes beside my coffee mug, knowing that one of them held the final stroke to our failing bond. Can we talk? She asked, her voice wavering, the bravado from earlier long faded. I looked up, meeting eyes that were wet with regret and something dangerously close to desperation. I think I made a mistake, she whispered, each word laced with the tremor of self-reproach. I leaned forward, trying to decipher the multitude of emotions behind her admission. Which mistake? I asked simply, though my heart was already steel-clad in resolve. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed insistently on the counter. She glanced at it, eyes widening as if expecting salvation in its notification, and then, as if cursed by fate, she turned it face down. But I'd already seen the preview on the lock screen, a message from Eli, biting in its brevity, reading, Don't make this a thing. It was just fun. I'm not your safety net. That one line confirmed it all. I could see the devastation etch itself into her features, the dawning horror that her attempt to find validation and escape the confines of our mutual neglect had led her astray. I had been watching it all unravel with a detached sort of clarity, the final act in a play where every role had been chosen long before either of us saw it. Don't you understand? She pleaded, her voice breaking. I just wanted you to see that I'm not some puppet. I needed to be free, to be respected on my own terms. Her eyes darted to mine, desperate for a sign of reconciliation, for the warmth of forgiveness. But that hope was long extinguished. I respected you enough to let you be free, I said, each word measured, my tone devoid of anger now and brimming instead with a quiet, unyielding finality. But freedom without support isn't respect. It's abandonment. I reached across the table and placed my hand on the pile of envelopes. I've made my choice. In that moment, she flinched as if struck. The air between us was charged with the weight of all the past neglect, the subtle withdrawals that I'd let accumulate until they became insurmountable. Instead of pleading for another chance, she crumbled into herself. Please, she started, voice barely audible, as if afraid that any further sound might shatter what little dignity she had left. I shook my head slowly. I won't be the safety net you're trying to build for yourself with someone else's hands. I've done all I can to support you, but you refused to let me help. You wanted independence, and I gave it to you fully. Now, you're living with the consequences. I slid one of the envelopes toward her, a divorce paper that wasn't just legal documentation, but the full embodiment of the reality we'd been dancing around for years. My hand remained steady as she reached out, her fingers trembling over the paper before she dared to pull it into her gaze. Then, as if in a final twist of poetic justice, I opened another envelope and placed my phone on the table. The screen displayed a series of screenshots, her empowerment posts on social media, the ones filled with snarky comments and jabs that mocked not just my efforts, but our shared history. Posts where she had laughed off my sacrifices, claiming pride in her newfound freedom, while the world around her saw only the echo of our disintegrated trust. You celebrated your independence like a trophy, I said softly, my voice low. But all it has brought you is isolation. Look at these. They're the markers of every time you chose to cut me out, every moment you valued your own image over our reality. I paused, letting the truth settle, watching the color drain from her face as she scrolled through the images, each one a painful reminder of choices that had led us here. There was no more argument to be had. No sudden burst of anger, no desperate accusations. Just the heavy silence of a truth that could no longer be denied. I continued, I won't be the one to prop up a relationship that has become one-sided. I never owed you a commitment that you refused to honor. And if this is what you want, absolute freedom, then you'll have to face it alone. Her eyes glistened with tears, a mixture of regret, sorrow, and the crushing realization of loss. In that profound moment, the woman who once filled my life with love and chaotic joy was nothing more than a shadow, grasping at a freedom that had cost her everything. I stood up slowly, not out of spite, but because I had to leave this place, this memory behind. I hope someday you'll understand that true freedom comes with responsibility, something we both failed to see. I turned away, not back to her, not to the past, but to the future that awaited me, a future where my worth wasn't measured by the weight of someone else's expectations. I left the room without looking back. The door closed behind me, and with it, the final chapter of our marriage was sealed. I didn't hear from her for a week after I left. Not a call, not a message, not a late-night apology, or even a passive-aggressive post. The silence told me everything I needed to know. Either she didn't know what to say, or she was waiting for me to break first. Maybe she thought I'd come back with guilt, or with flowers, or with a speech about how we were worth fighting for. But I didn't. Because by the time I walked out that door, I knew I wasn't leaving a marriage. I was walking away from a myth. A partnership that had already died in spirit long before I ever signed those papers. The real betrayal wasn't Eli. It wasn't even her saying, "You don't own me." It was everything after. Every time she doubled down instead of opening up. Every time she chose ego over honesty, image over intimacy. I didn't file for revenge. I filed for freedom. Mine. The divorce went through without much pushback. Maybe she thought fighting me would cost her more. Or maybe, deep down, she knew it was over. That she'd crossed lines we couldn't uncross. Last I heard, she moved into a studio apartment not far from the gym where she met Eli. He ghosted her. Classic. Her sister Kira told me she was trying to find herself again, but the version of her that was worth finding got lost long before Eli ever came into the picture. As for me, I'm rebuilding. Quietly. No fanfare. No rebound relationships or inspirational Instagram quotes. Just mornings that don't start with anxiety and nights that don't end in silence. And peace. Real, earned peace. But there was another path I could have taken. If I had confronted her earlier, when the first signs of resentment surfaced, when she started pulling away, I sometimes wonder if it would have made a difference. If I'd called out her selfishness directly, if I hadn't tried to respect her space so much that I left myself stranded, maybe we'd have fought. Maybe it would have been ugly. But maybe that fight would have cleared the air, exposed the rot before it grew into a wall between us. Maybe she'd have realized how far she was drifting. Or maybe I'd have realized sooner that I was already alone. But then again, some storms only look small from a distance. I've often imagined a different outcome, one where I forgave her. One where, when she broke down in the kitchen clutching her phone, I put my arms around her instead of pushing that envelope across the table. Told her we'd figure it out. That I still saw the woman I married buried under all that fear and ego and need to feel in control. And maybe if I'd done that, just maybe, she would have chosen me over whatever freedom she was chasing. But here's the part one can't ignore. I'd still be carrying the weight alone. Because forgiveness without change is just surrender. And I wasn't born to live in defeat.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.